Hi viewers, this is Srinivasan and Ramanujam again on sharing our experiences and thoughts on handling things which are relevant from the perspective of mind as well as everyday life. Ram, actually, I had a very interesting encounter last week. Usually when we have these group discussions, be it in the work front or subject matter front, whenever we have people of our age or sometimes even seniors to us sitting to us, we just bubble with ideas, right? So there is always this, hey, let me first put my point in the front. And many a times, even before someone concludes what they want to say, the other person usually assumes that this is what he or she is trying to say. And, they start making their points. And it takes a lot of time for the other person to actually come and say that, no, 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 I did not mean to say this, I mean to say that, and in very unpleasant times it can also end up into a conflict, right? We might have come across such situations a lot. Actually, this week what had happened was, fortunately I came across a Japanese gentleman, right? And I observed something very nice about him. Earlier I had heard about very high about Japanese on this context, but this time I happened to experience it firsthand. So there was this gentleman who was waiting for all the points to be spoken, gave a pause, and then made what his point was for the response or for responding for the points that were made to him. Incidentally, uh, while you and me are talking in English or Tamil or any Indian languages, I feel our dialect or our way of speaking is not as fast as Japanese also. So he also had a translator in between. So
Mm.
their language itself was spoken very fast, but in spite of that, there was this inherent patience that I admired in the gentleman. He patiently listened and then he responded. This sounded very sweet. This was, what do I say? It was like a rain on a dry piece of land, to put it in a very poetical sense. Ram, what do you think? Very nice experience, right? So I just thought I'll pick your brain on communication. Or to put it on an interesting conundrum,
Mm.
the universe or the Almighty has given mankind with two eyes, two nostrils, 2 ears, two legs, two hands, and interestingly, one mouth.
One more.
So nature actually insisted us on listening and observing by seeing as well as listening. But somehow our mind insists on talking many a times.
Hmm.
Ram, your thoughts.
I think civilization is at the root cause of the whole anti-pattern where we have defined what nature has given us and what we think we want to use it. Because if we look at it, I think there's also something that we commonly discuss. The reason why we have a lot of these critical inputs, like the eyes, the ears, etc., is to be able to, and also the olfactory sense, which is the nose, they have the kind of inputs that go and have a greater survival value for us, or had a greater survival value for us as a species when we weren't all this civilized. The mouth fundamentally has a very limited function, like you said, and as things go, it should have a very limited function, even in terms of speaking. But okay, anyway, jokes apart, right? Or the survival value apart, I guess the crux of what you experienced, right, or you had this aha moment with that Japanese gentleman, and then you compare it with them, is how is someone able to just listen so patiently in a world where we're always running and then we always want to put forth our point and just get the whole thing, our view across the table, right? So, as I mean, instead of, there are a lot of these principles, right? When we always talk about in a conversation, relationships, for example, or when we talk about building a rapport with somebody, building trust and all of that, we always hear this, right? Listen before talking. Listening is different from hearing, so on and so forth, right? Uh, but I think at the, like I said, at the root of why we have all these different organs, the sense organs, the way they are organized, they had a survival value. Today, we do not have all those different dangers that were always there, right? But then it doesn't mean that the ears have lost their utility value, because in the civilizational sense also, let's say when we are in an organization, for example, you had a fairly elaborate question, you shared an experience, and you said this gave me this experience. I had a really nice moment where I was able to reflect on the difference in behavior. So this intrigued me. I had to ask a question. I had to pick your brain, right? And what I'm essentially doing now is I'm reflecting with you as to what you told me in my own words, right? I'm paraphrasing what you told me. Now assume we agreed ahead of time that we'll talk about communication, right? Or we talk about listening skills, to be very specific. And when you were raising this question with me, had I just wandered around, looked at something here and there, or I had already decided on, from my mind that I had to talk about something else, and I just go on and start saying whatever I want, the disconnect would be really obvious, although we are talking about the same subject, right? So let's say our viewers are viewing this. Then we started off with a little joke about evolution, serious matter, but not really relevant to what we are talking. Started talking about evolution. We still
Yes.
went and said, yeah, but there is still a purpose for this. And I said, yeah, I reflected. So they're able to connect and there is a flow. Or if I had just jumped and started off wherever I wanted to, like I'm memorizing and then kind of rendering from my rote memory, then they won't even be able to connect. They'll think, okay, Srinivasan is asking something, Ramanujam is saying, whatever comes to his mind, are they even in sync with each other, right? And we leave others aside, right? What if this happens in a personal relationship? What if this happens at work where we are trying to do something constructive, right? Or we are in a situation where somebody, let's say a friend or someone in a social setting is trying to share something with us, right? But we are too busy to listen. We are processing thoughts in our mind and we are not listening actively, right? And then we are just saying, yeah, I know these things happen. We always come see people giving these generic messages. What happens to the trust between those individuals, that comfort between those individuals, right? So that is why listening, not just hearing, right? Because hearing is just letting sounds pass through ear, right? It's a mechanical process. But listening is actually all about how much you value the individual in front of you, right? And how present you are, how much of your awareness is invested in the individual in front of you, and how much respect and trust you have for the person to the point where you want to listen, absorb, reflect, and then respond, which is typically what your Japanese friend did in that particular context. I'll pause here if you have anything to further
Correct.
reflect on.
Very nicely put. As you told, a statement came to my mind, right? Yeah, hearing is what your eardrums do, listening is what you do.
Wow.
To put it
You're the master of one-liners.
uh, yes, you are absolutely right, Ram. In fact, like you told, a lot of interpersonal conflicts can also come because someone is lacking to listen, right? Now, you emphasized on a very important point in communication. When I am talking to you or when I am hearing to you, it is better I look at you and show some intention that whether I am trying to deliver some message to you or trying to receive some message from you, I actually do that with an intent. I think so that forms the basis for communication, very specifically listening. Ram. To share a little anecdote within a few couple of seconds, I had one of my friends and he was in peak of his research and I was also going through my research at that time with a lot of intensity. Sometimes I used to want a light moment, so I used to go to his place and talk to him. Suddenly the guy will be seeing his PC and doing this like this, and it happened twice or thrice, and the fourth time I told, look, if you don't have time to talk to me, you please better let me know. I don't want to be you know reacted upon like this. That was really not pleasant. So I think so that very beautifully came out from what you told, Ram. That being said, I think so just as the way today, a very bad example, but still let me put it that way. Just as the way exams are being conducted or even sometimes wars are being conducted, I think so. We should take care to agree to communicate before actually starting the communication. Can I put it that way?
Yeah.
Like when there is an examination, examiner agrees to examine and the examinee agrees to be examined. And then the process is very mutual. Likewise, if there is something important to be communicated, I think so. Better it is told a priori that this much time and attention of you is required, and then you do the talking until and otherwise the situation demands breaking into someone's space. And I think so. This is also important in personal context. What do you think so? Of course, I don't mean to say for a moment that friendship and families can be run like office. Hey, today evening 4:30 to 5:30, let us discuss on the groceries for next month. That's not a. It's not a bad idea, but it's not a practical idea. Also, what do you think, Ram? You are a much experienced person on this regard.
So we'll probably break this into 2 or 3 parts possibly, right? So you
Mm.
first, I think, and I'll come in the reverse order, right? Because I think if it will be better if we go and then we land the punch on the first question you asked about how you felt invalidated when you had that conversation. So we'll go to that at the end. And just
Yeah.
to touch upon the most recent point that you mentioned, right? It is not possible for us to run a family like a workplace. In the sense, you can't
Mm.
just go and say, I'll block your calendar, let us sit for 20 minutes and plan the grocery purchase for
Yes.
next week.
Yes.
Sometimes in families where communication patterns are a little difficult because of a chaotic lifestyle that people think, this is where, there is this very fine line that should not be crossed, right? There's a difference between taking liberty with your loved ones and taking them for granted. Because when that line is crossed,
Very beautiful.
people feel disrespected. It doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter how long you have lived with them, how close you are, how much you love them, how much they love you. It doesn't matter. When that line is crossed, we feel invalidated. We feel disrespected. And that is the root of all conflicts, like you said. So when there are these chaotic patterns, there are different patterns, and I think everybody goes through, right? Especially when you have young children, when you have a busy work life, and there's so much to balance. Quite often we tend to forget things. Quite often we tend to overlook things which, and then transactionally when you find things, it becomes difficult. For example, in my place, we have a ritual of sitting together for half an hour every weekend and preparing what is called as a meal plan for the subsequent week. So it's a very focused family exercise
Oh.
where 4 of us sit together and we do this planning and say this is what we'll try to do, and the
Ah,
purchase
this is
decisions.
wonderful.
Yeah, we do that. We do that
So
because
one week we should talk on this. I mean, this is so interesting. I'm really appreciated. Right?
yeah.
Nice.
So this is something we do, which fundamentally means that now I'm going to dedicate time. We are going to focus on something that's very important for us as a family. And then, I can be quite pained, right? I can be quite picky about eating. And so sometimes I might complain, oh, why is this here today? Or I might have had a long day. I'm coming home tired. Somehow I'm just expecting that some awesome meal meal will be there. The food will be awesome. There's no question there. But I have some expectations before. I'm trying to compensate for something else. And when I come and I find something that I don't really want, I'll say, oh, I'll sulk and say, I'm very tired. I thought something will be there. And we said, no, not a good idea. Right. So I was at fault there. And then we said, we'll do this. It really works because I now know that this is typically what can be expected and there is some order. So it helps to have that kind of a structure to bring about some order, and then I think the family can just go on in steady state and then say this is the rhythm at which the cadence at which this everything runs. So that is something that really helps. So one part of it, right? So it's a good habit building or a routine building mechanism. The second thing, obviously, in the workplace, etc., or anywhere for that matter, even in the personal setting, it is a good idea to say that I need to discuss something important with you, right? Please give me
Mm.
some time. Let us sit together and talk. It's not that many people misconstrue that. Why should I take, let's say, tell my wife or husband or parent or children that I want this time with you uninterrupted. It's our family. When I
Mm.
go and call them, they should come, right? But we are recording this video now. What if my wife comes and says, I want 10 minutes? It's going to interrupt our recording. Or my child comes and says,
Correct.
Appa, I want 10 minutes with you. So so what I've told them is next 20, 30 minutes we are recording. I do not want to be interrupted. Then I will spend 20 minutes with you, whatever, right? So we can always have that agreement. It is actually a sign of respect. And when we do that, we are more
True.
likely to be attentive in our conversation.
Very true. Very true.
Right. And thirdly, and I said this is where we land the punch on the whole topic. And that's why active listening is very, very important. Right. We all feel invalidated at times, right? We go and try to talk to somebody. They're just mechanically nodding their head, or we know that they're looking somewhere else, their eyes are elsewhere. They just trying to be nice to us. Right. And sometimes we do that too. We are preoccupied, but we don't want to tell them that we are preoccupied because we don't want to look incourteous or whatever. And then we end up being even more discourteous.
Rude.
right? And then they perceive it, then that's the root of conflict, right? So at the root of all of this, you said rude. It's actually a very, very nice way, right? That's one way people perceive our inattention. And we feel all of this because it is not because the words we say are not landing. It is not because they are not physically responding, but we know that our presence is not being validated. When we actively listen, so for example, I'm listening to you actively now, you're saying a few words, right? I'm looking at your body language because listening is not just about the auditory part of it, right? Not just the words. It's about me observing your body language. It's about me observing how your eyes are moving, your eye contact, the way your gait, your posture, right? So if you start fidgeting or moving around like this, I'll know you are bored, right? And these are some of the cues that we need to take, right? When we this is all of this is part of listening. Listening is not just a ear business, right? It's an entire sensory experience where we bring in all of these together. And when I do that, regardless of what I say as a consequence, right? I might say, sorry, I cannot help you. Somebody says, but I'm listening to you with intent, I'm processing it, and I'm coming back and saying, look, really, I'm really sorry, I cannot make it some case. Or I can say I'm okay. You will still feel that as a human, your time, what you share, and your very being, your presence was actually accepted, respected, considered. And then something else that the other person said is actually their position, and it is not a reflection of how they perceive me. So you will no longer feel invalidated. And that is, I think, the very, very essence of listening. Right? That's why 2 ears are there, 2 eyes are there. We have to get all of these in, process in. What little comes out must be meaningful. I think, I'll probably leave it back to you at the point you started, Sriji. This really is the essence of
In fact, I really loved the one of the words that you had used during your reflection. You said invalidated, right? Uh, I would also like to take another conundrum to this word. Probably, I would like to end up with this discussion, this
Mhm.
particular episode, with this discussion. See, probably sometimes deep within, I feel this is also again coming from my little experiences. Sometimes we tend to talk a lot for validation,
Yeah.
right? So I need to belong to a group, or I need to appear competent enough in a place,
Mhm.
or I need to show to my family that, my particular way of doing thing is going to happen for a particular thing. Maybe in this case, if we are very insistent, if I
Mm.
can put it that way, or if we want little more validation than what we perceive we are receiving, I think so. The communication will happen from inside out rather than outside in, or the communication is going to happen through mouth and not through the ears. The challenge is if everyone participating in a communication starts feeling this way, then there is only going to be a chatter and
Yeah,
it's not going to be communication.
absolutely.
In such situation,
Mm.
how do you think one should develop this self-reliance? You are a practicing psychologist. You can help us a lot on these stuff. How do you think someone should develop self-validation that notwithstanding whether Mr.
Mm.
Ram listens to what I say or not,
Mm.
I feel happy the moment I have, tried expressing myself and stopping at that rather than insisting every single statement to you that I told this because of these reasons, you have to, and putting the same thing again and again in different forms. I hope my question was clear and what I
No, that's
wanted you to
that's
reflect, Ram.
no, that's a really good question, and this is something that we truly have to reflect. I think we can make hundreds of episodes because the reason why individuals seek external validation is much larger than the world itself, right? I
Beautiful.
probably touch upon this, right? So you spoke about social affiliation, right? So be the need to belong to a group, the need to be part of a
Mm,
community, the need to be recognized as part of a community, right? Not
mm,
ostracized and put aside, right? All of this drives our social dynamics, right? Sometimes we pretend to listen because we want to belong in a group. We don't mean to be rude. Sometimes we don't tell
true.
people, hey, I really am preoccupied, I'm busy with something. Can I then make some time to listen to you because we don't want to hurt them? Because if we keep hurting people by saying we are busy, they'll think we are arrogant and they'll not talk. So let me at least nod my head. So there is quite a lot that actually contributes. Now, individuals feel insufficient or not grounded in themselves for so many reasons, right? Which is why there's such a demand for therapy and all of that. And then each individual's case is different. But I think, like you said, the need for external validation, if I can, probably put it in a nutshell, comes from a lack of self-motivation. That people do not have an intrinsic sense of motivation. People do not have, when we say motivation, it's not about feeling encouraged to do something, right? People do not have an intrinsic self-sufficiency, a spiritual or a psychological self-sufficiency, if I can call it that way, right? They may be lacking in certain things. For instance, they were never listened to as children. Right, today, let's say if I was never listened to
Oh,
as a kid, I grew up alone. But at that age, if I tried to shout or speak above my elders, I probably would have been beaten. So I'm trying to be survivalistic, and then I'm saying, hey, I'll keep quiet because I need to live in this family. But then I grow up, I get into a position of a significant position where I have some power. Now nobody is going to hit me. But I still do not know how to communicate meaningfully because I never learned that habit. So I talk over all over people, everything that I could not do as a child, which was all bottled up inside me, all those patterns of behavior that I wanted to exhibit, I start showing now because now nobody can question me, at least as an adult. But what it does is it ruins things in a totally different way. And people say, oh, you never listen, you are insensitive, so on and so forth. And there could be a million reasons why people need that external validation. That can be a whole set of topics on its own. But I think, yeah, in essence, if people are intrinsically grounded, if they are sure of who they are, right? If they are able to clearly separate the two things, right? One is, yeah, I'm presenting a point of view. It's up to you to take it or not. Your decision on whether you take a point that I make or not is a reflection of maybe some reality or some constraints or who you are as a person. It doesn't reflect who I am as a person. Because if it reflected who I am as a person, I would never have made that point in the first place. So if people have that's a paradox we never recognize actively because we don't first listen to ourselves.
mm,
So, okay,
deep,
so
very deep.
to actually give you a very simple answer to the entire question of why people don't feel validated is because they don't listen to themselves. And if we start reflecting, becoming mindful about who we are and listening to ourselves, we will discover who we are. And then once we discover who we are, it's just going to be what do you call? Yeah, it's going to be a lot easier. Of course, we'll still feel hurt, but we can recover quickly and not bother about anything else. So,
Viewers should uh, understand that I think so they'll be motivated that we should speak like Ram. Be very confident and thorough on the contents that you are speaking extempore, that people will hardly find it hard to not listen to you. Very beautiful points. In fact, you told points like, I know, self-sufficiency, one being grounded to their own self. These two are very serious points. And Ram, I feel like upcoming episodes, we will discuss these two in great elaboration. I think so. We have had a very good start. We understood why listening is a very important point of communication. Of course, I will add a slight pinch of salt to it. Sometimes talking can be much more important than listening. That comes with a very different conundrum when the emotions are piled up and someone is not able to release it. Better to talk, cry, or shout, or Ram, if you have any better word to put that act of releasing out. I think so. I will be thankful if you can fill the gap. If in case I had left a gap on it,
there's
but
no
let
gap.
let us have. Thank you. So let us have this grounded to oneself as well as self-sufficient as topics in the next few episodes, Ram, so that we are cogent and we try to finish this interesting conundrum well, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
you're very kind, Sriji, and I hope I can live up to all the kind words you've said about me. And I think we've made a good start. We'll build on this as we go along the way. So yeah, I really
Okay.
thank you
Thank
for
you,
being on
viewers.
this.
Thanks, Ram. Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.